Hiya folks, and welcome once again to JD Living's Fantasy Premier League. Right folks, we've only got 1 week left now until the season starts properly. Obviously you can join at any point after the season started, but it's going to be harder for you to get that top spot. So you've only got a week left to sign up. If you're not sure how to sign up, go back to my first week where I show you how it runs through on the app. You can also log in via the website, which is fantasy.premierleague.com. Once you've registered and got your team together, just go to join a league, and the league code will be in the description below. I'm just going to go through each team that's individually in the league and just name a handful of players out there that I think will possibly perform well this year. First of all, we look at Arsenal. You've got obviously a goalkeeper choice, Aaron Ramsdale. Came out of nowhere last year really and had a great season last year. Arsenal were looking pretty good this season, and I think he'll have another good season. He's going to cost you $5 million, which is about an average kind of price for a goalkeeper. In defence, there's Gabriel and Tierney and Zinchenko. Gabriel, again, a young Brazilian lad, broke into the team last year, had a really good season. I think he could be a force again this year. Tierney started the season last year with a few injuries, but hopefully he'll hit the ground running this year and could be a good force as well. He will get some assists during the season. And Zinchenko, obviously, coming from Man City, for me he's been going to be a first choice this season in that Arsenal defence. Midfield, Odegaard, not sure how many points he's going to get. He's a good player, but he may not get necessarily a lot of points. And Saka, he plays as an attacking midfielder, but he's classed as a midfielder, so you almost play that forward midfield role. Very good player, very young player, scored a lot of points the last 2 seasons really, but he does cost $8 million, so he's on the upper echelon of the midfielders. By the way, Gabriel and Tierney are both $5 million, which same again is about average for a good centre back. Zinchenko is also $5 million, which I think is a bit of a bargain in my opinion. Up front, obviously they've got another Man City transfer, Jesus. Scored a few goals in pre-season. It's looking solid, and I think this could be a really good season for Jesus. That's it for Arsenal. Next we move on to Aston Villa. Martinez in goal, scored a lot of points last season. It's going to cost you $5 million. Like I said, there'll be a lot of $5 million goalkeepers coming through. Matty Cash in defence, $5 million, scored very well last season. Don't know if he can do it again this year, but he's a good scorer. Cash is also $5 million. In midfield, Coutinho, he's the £7 million man in midfield. Will score goals, create assists. He'll get some points this year. The other two are Buendia, $6 million, and Aaron Ramsey for $5.5. Not sure on either of these two if they're going to be high scorers or not, but they're definitely worth potential for that sort of reserve spot. Up front for Villa, you've got Ollie Watkins. Not a great year last year, broke through the season before. Hopefully he can bounce back again. $7.5 million, but you've also got Danny Ings, old head, scores a reasonably amount of goals every season really, as long as he plays and stays fit. He's a £7 million man. Next up is Bournemouth, one of the promoted teams from last year. Don't know an awful lot about them. The only two names I've really picked out for that, and that's Ryan Fredericks in defence at $4.5 million. Good defender, but Bournemouth, will they score many points defensive wise? $4.5 million, like I say. Solanke up front. He went from Liverpool to Bournemouth with quite a big fanfare really. People were expecting the youngster to really kick on and start to play. Not necessarily produced it a lot, but only $6 million, very cheap for a forward. So same again, could be that reserve spot. Brentford, only 2 names here for Brentford as well really. Ben Mee, who's come over from Burnley, he's a very good centre back. Brentford, can they kick on though and maybe keep the sort of scores they did last year? Not too sure about that. So he may not score many points, but only $4.5 million, definitely worth a shout for a reserve defender. And Ivan Toney up front, obviously like I said before, $7 million. He did score a lot of goals last year, but can he kick it on again? Next up is Brighton. A team that I think really do outshine what they've got in the team, but they've got Sanchez in goal, 4.5 million. Good goalkeeper, very good goalkeeper for that sort of price as well, so it could be worth a shout. Don't know how you pronounce the name, but Cucurella. Obviously Man City are looking at him, and by the time this goes up, or by next week when the season starts, he could be a Man City player. But he cost 5 million, which isn't a bad shout for if he stays at Brighton. If he goes to Man City, he may not necessarily be a regular starter. Lewis Dunk in defence, he's going to be a £4.5 million man, solid at the back. But Brighton, same again, will they continue to keep clean sheets? Lallana and midfield, 5 million. Will he play regularly enough? Not sure, but 5 million is a good shout for a midfielder, a reserve midfielder. And up front, the only real striker they've got that I think is any good really is Welbeck, and he's hit and miss really since he went over to Brighton. 6.5 million, that's not too bad a price. Next up, we've got the Blues, the Chelsea. Obviously, the cost will start to go up for these sort of the bigger teams. We'll start with Mendy in goal, 5 million. Not bad shout at all. Although they have lost some defenders this year, even though they've brought some in, and I went to one in a minute, they've lost 2 really good centre-backs from last season, out of contract at the end of the year. I lost them both, so will the defence be assured this year? But the 2 men in defence that I'm going to mention, Reece James, £6 million man, plays as a wing-back or a full-back, will get your assists, will get the odd goal, and Chelsea could keep clean sheets this year. And one of the new men coming in I'm going to mention is Koulibaly. Not a huge price tag on him as well, 5.5 million. He will probably be the number 1 starter in the centre-back position for Chelsea this year as well. And you've got 3 midfielders I'm going to mention. Pulisic, 6 million, reasonably good price, but will he start a lot of games? Mason Mount, he does score regularly, a good attacking midfielder at 8 million. And Sterling, the new man over from Man City to Chelsea, £10 million though for a midfielder. That's on the upper echelons of the midfield prices. He will be a starter though, and he does score goals. He scored goals at Liverpool when he scored goals at Man City. Can he continue at Chelsea? Because all they've got up front otherwise is Havertz. At £8 million man, there's talk of him possibly leaving as well. So Sterling for me will be either the false 9 kind of position that he played at Man City at times, or definitely one of the wider men. Next up, we've got Crystal Palace. They've just signed a good goalkeeper in Sam Johnson from West Bromwich Albion. Palace a shaky defence though, but can he make a difference? He will get some bonus points for you, and will get some good save points as well. Maybe not the clean sheets though. He's going to cost you 4.5 million, very good price for a goalkeeper. Nathaniel Klein is the only really defender I can pick out this Crystal Palace team though. For 4.5 million, he's going to be more of your reserve man, but still not a bad price for a defender. Midfield, you've got Zaha and Eze. 7 million for Zaha, 5.5 for Eze. Both players attacking midfielders or even strikers at times, so they could get you some points from a midfield position. And Edouard up front, 5.5 million. I think he's a very good shout. Come down from Celtic last season. Didn't nail down that first team position, but when he did play, he did score a few goals. Everton up next, a team that I think will really struggle this year and I think could go down. They've got Pickford in goal though, 4.5 million. Good goalkeeper. Tarkowski, the new signing this season, for 4.5 million in defence. Couldn't be too bad. Dele Alli, can he get back to the form he had when he first started at Tottenham? We shall see, but it's 5.5 million, so that's a very good price for a midfielder of his quality, previous quality. Gordon in midfield as well for 5.5 million, good young player. Everyone's tipping big things for him, so maybe he can get you a few points. And up front, Calvert-Lewin, very hit and miss the last year and a half, 2 years. He's been really high and obviously getting into the England squad as well. But towards the second half of last season, he was lucky to get many games really. But he's 8 million, so it's quite expensive for a player who has not had a good year last year. Fulham, another young team, another team coming up from the Championship. Don't know too much about, but Tom Kearney in midfield is a very good player. 5 million is a very good price. And Mitrovic up front. Mitrovic is a player who scored a ton of goals in the Championship. When he has played in the Premier League, he's never quite managed to convert that Championship form, but maybe this season is the year. Next up is Leeds. Leeds have got very poor defensive and goalkeeping options in my opinion. But midfield, they've got David James, who came over from Manchester United last season. Didn't do as well as I thought he would do last year. He was in my fantasy team last year for quite a big period. But he will be suspended until the 13th of August, so I think it's the first 2 games he's going to miss. But he's a £6 million midfielder, not too bad a price. And Harrison as well, also £6 million midfield. Up front, another one from 2 years ago, had a good year. Last season, not so much. Patrick Bamford, £7.5 million. He could be worth a shout, possibly. Leicester next, and same again. The goalkeeper, Schmeichel, I'd normally put as a great goalkeeper, but there's been talk of him now leaving the club this season. He's got to 35 years old in the club and maybe looking at making a change there. I'm not too sure how long he's got left in his contract. That may be an issue for him wanting to go. So Schmeichel's a possibility. I've not got the price down for him. It might be a possibility if you want to take a risk before. I hope he stays at the club. But in midfield, they've got 3 midfielders of me. Harvey Barnes, 7 million. Telemans, 6.5 million. And James Maddison, 8 million. Obviously, Maddison's been talking about him leaving to maybe Tottenham. But at the moment, he's not going anywhere. So Maddison for 8 million is not a bad shout. And Jamie Vardy, what can you say about Jamie Vardy? 9.5 million. He's always going to be quite an expensive player. He scores goals season in, season out. Getting to that upper age now, but he doesn't seem to be losing anything at all. Next 2 clubs coming up are the 2 big ones. Liverpool, first of all. Alisson, goalkeeper, 5.5 million. I think 5.5 is the best price you're going to get, is the highest price you pay for a goalkeeper. 5.5 million for Alisson. Defence wise, they've got Alexander Arnold. I've just picked out 2. Alexander Arnold at 7.5 million is the most expensive defender, and Van Dijk 6.5 million. Solid at the back, will score goals from corners. Alexander Arnold obviously is a top scorer from last season as well in defence. Gets assists, gets your goals as well. So if you've got them spare cash to get Alexander Arnold in, I'd try and get him in. Midfield, you've got Salah and Diaz. Both obviously play as front men but class as midfielders. Salah 13 million though. I think he's the most expensive player in the game. Diaz 8 million. Great option. He will get more games than last year obviously, but will he play week in, week out? And last one is Nunez, their new signing. Scored some great goals in the pre-season, and can he carry that form on? I think he's going to take over the Firmino role. He's going to be that central striker now, but we shall see if he can continue on to the season at pre-season form. Next up, Man City. A plethora of riches in this team. You've got Ederson and goal for 5.5 million. The 3 centre-backs, you've got more. Diaz, Laporte and Cancelo are the top 3 for me, but you've also got John Stones and Nathan Ake as well. Diaz is 6 million, Laporte is 6 million, and Cancelo is 7 million. Cancelo was the top scorer of the 3 defenders last year, and he was second top scorer I think overall last season. Next in midfield you've got Jack Grealish, 7 million. He's gone down in price from last season. He was higher than that last year. Kevin De Bruyne, assist central, and Phil Foden, 8 million. De Bruyne is 12 million, so he's an expensive midfielder. And up front, you've got the main man himself, Haaland, 11.5 million. Hopefully he can carry that form what he got from the Bundesliga in the last 2 years into the Premiership and can kick on from there and score goals for fun. I think he will. He's in my team. Manchester United up next. De Gea as a goalkeeper, 5 million. Varane and Shaw as the 2 defenders I've picked, 5 million apiece. Defence has been shaky for the last 2 or 3 years. Will it shore up a bit with this new manager now? Maybe I think they need to bring 1 or 2 new players in, but I think Shaw at left back is a good shout. He does get a few assists as well, and Varane is that main centre back for them. Bruno Fernandes in midfield is 10 million. I think it's quite expensive after the season he had last year. Wasn't as good as the season before. Jadon Sancho, 7.5 million. Could be a good shout. It's not a bad price for a player of his quality, but can he find that form from the previous season in the Bundesliga that he didn't quite show last year, although he did have a few good games. Eriksen going over to Manchester United this year. Will he be a regular player? It was a great story for him to come back last season. He showed a lot of good form last season. He's gone to obviously a top club like Manchester United, so hopefully he'll get some game time. Marcus Rashford, surely he can't have another season like last year, but I think that will depend on the last player I'm going to mention. Rashford, 6.5 million. Then up front, Ronaldo, 10.5 million. what can you say about Ronaldo? He's been one of the best players in the last 10 to 15 years in the world. Still scoring goals last year, and he was Manchester United's top scorer last year. But there's been talks of him going as well. The next club, Moneybags Newcastle. They managed to sign Pope this season as a goalkeeper, and he's going to cost you $5 million if you want him. Trippier, $5 million as well, which isn't a bad shout for a defender. Scores a lot of goals and free kicks and stuff like that, so we'll create a few. Will that defence be sure enough though in the season to get any clean sheets? We'll see. Guimaraes, the midfielder from Brazil, scored some good points for Newcastle last year. He's going to be a £6 million man. Saint-Maximin, there's been talk of him leaving as well. There are a few clubs linked with him at the moment, but if not, he's going to be a £6.5 million Newcastle man for the coming season. And up front you've got Wilson, £7.5 million. You also got Wood. I've not put down his price. I think it was about 6 to 7 million though for Wood. Chris Wood as well. Did score a few goals when he came over last year. Nottingham Forest up next. A team I don't know very much about. But they did manage to get Henderson as their goalkeeper from Manchester United on loan for the season. £4.5 million for him. Would be a good shout, but the defence is not necessarily great. I've got Williams as a defender for £4 million. Nico Williams has come over this season, so he's going to be an interesting shout this year and see if he can pick up a few points. And obviously the latest news you had in the last week or so, they managed to prize Jesse Lingard to convince him to go to Nottingham Forest, and he's going to cost you £6 million if you want him, and he's classed as a midfielder as well. Southampton up next. They're a good solid team, but no real stars. Two have managed to pick out. You've got Carl Walker-Peters as a defender for £4.5 million. Got some good points last year. Will create a few goals. And Southampton do tend to get a few clean sheets during the season. And obviously James Ward-Prowse, you've got as a midfielder. He's going to cost you £6.5 million. Very good price for a good midfielder who will score goals throughout the season. My Tottenham up next. Lloris as a goalkeeper for £5.5 million. He's classed as one of those upper class defenders. I think they'll get a lot of clean sheets this year. Two defenders I've picked out. Lenglet. He's the new guy we've just brought over on loan. £5 million is going to cost you. And Jed Spence, the one from £4.5 million we got from Middlesbrough, was on loan at Forest last year. Very good young talented Englishman. Will he play week in week out? I don't know, but for £4.5 million, if you've got a reserve and you've got some spare change there, £4.5 million is not a bad shout. Midfield now, you've got Son, £12 million. He's obviously a top priced midfielder, but he scores goals, creates a lot of goals as well. Kulusevski, £8 million. I think he's like, if you can't get the money if you haven't got the 12 million spare for Son, definitely worth a shout. Kulusevski at £8 million. You've got Richarlison, who's going to be pushing for his place this year, but Kulusevski, I think for me, is a better player. And obviously Harry Kane up front, £11.5 million, same price as Haaland. He scored a few goals pre-season, so hopefully he can kick on and start to get to that 20 goals a season he was previously, before last season. Down to the last two clubs now. West Ham, Craig Dawson in defence, £5 million. Antonio, £7.5 million. Can he score the goals he has in the past? They've got a new guy coming over though from Italy, Scamacca. Don't know too much about him, but he's going to cost you £7 million. Good price for a possible good striker. I've heard some good things. I don't know too much, but I've heard some good things. And Bowen, who ended up playing a lot of centre forward position last year, he's going to cost you £8.5 million as a midfielder, which isn't a bad price for midfield, but an average kind of price. And then lastly, Wolves, their goalkeeper Sarr. Honestly, didn't know too much about him, if I'm honest with you, but he cost £5 million. And last season he was the fourth best goalkeeper in the league, so he could get you some good points for £5 million. Connor Cody in defence was their best defender last year for £5 million. Not a bad shout. Ruben Neves in midfield, £5.5 million. Traore in midfield as well for £5.5 million. Not a huge Traore fan. I think he's got a lot of pace, but not much else. And up front, Raul Jimenez. Will he start to play more regularly now after last season's coming back from that serious injury? He did start to score goals towards the end of the season, so he could be a good shout. Right guys, that's a rundown of some of the players that I've picked out to look out for potentially, and some good prices there, but there's some really high prices as well. So pick your teams, join the league and enjoy the competition. Right folks, that's it for this week. join me next week when I run through week 1 fixtures and I make my predictions of some of the teams that might do well. Till then, see you later.